In David Lodge's novel called Thinks, there are two characters who are having a conversation typical of many contemporary conversations about religion. Ralph Messenger, who's a linguistic scientist and an easygoing unbeliever, is attracted to Helen Reed, a lapsed Catholic who teaches literature. Ralph had been watching her walk across the university campus when she disappeared and he lost track of her. Later on, he asks her, "Where were you? Where did you go?" She answered, "I went into the chapel." "For what?" "Why do people usually go into a chapel on a Sunday morning?" "Are you religious then?" And there's a note of disapproval and disappointment in his voice. "Well," she answered, "I was brought up Catholic. I don't believe anymore, but oh good," he said. "Why do you say that?" "Well, it's impossible to have a rational conversation about anything important with religious people. I suppose that's why I didn't think of looking for you in the chapel, because I had you down as an intelligent, rational person. So what were you doing there if you're not a believer?" "Well, I don't believe literally in the whole caboodle," she answered, "you know, the virgin birth and transubstantiation and the infallibility of the Pope and all of that. But sometimes I think there must be a kind of truth behind it." Now, this story comes from a book by Episcopal priest and author Alan Jones, a book with the revealing title, Reimagining Christianity, Reconnect Your Spirit Without Disconnecting Your Mind. To say that Easter, the resurrection, has a kind of truth behind it does not mean the same thing as saying that it is true in a factual, literal kind of way. But it does have kind of a truth behind it, doesn't it? Otherwise, why are we all here today? Richard Holloway, a former bishop in the Episcopal Church in Scotland, wrote a book called Doubts and Loves: What is Left of Christianity? And in his book, he contends that there are two resurrections, only one of which is available to us today. The first resurrection is what he calls the originating event, the mythic resurrection lost in the mists of time, what he calls the Big Bang that ignited the Christian movement. But apart from speculation and curiosity, this resurrection is not available to us today. The second resurrection is what Holloway calls the effectual resurrection, which is the continuing impact that Jesus has had on history. The resurrection is best understood, or maybe I should say best used, as a symbol, as a metaphor, a sign of the human possibility of transformation. A transformation that can be experienced at two different levels: the personal level and the corporate or societal level. The Easter story is an archetypal story. That is a story that is both timeless and placeless, brimming with meaning on both the personal and the corporate levels. At the personal level, stories abound describing personal transformations of all kinds. The ending of significant relationships in separation and divorce, the beginning of new relationships, the death of a loved one, the overcoming of addictions, the experience of an illness, of healing, the embrace of a healthier way of living. Sometimes, but not always, and not necessarily, things that we would describe as religious or spiritual. Good Friday and Easter, death and resurrection together, are a central image in the New Testament for the path to a transformed life. And this path involves a dying to an old way of life and being reborn into a new way of being. Good Friday and Easter together are about this journey, this path, the path of dying and rising, of being born anew. We all have our Maundy Thursday experiences of denial and betrayal, let down by those we trusted and loved. And we all also have our Good Friday experiences, our experiences of pain and loss and what seems like undeserved suffering. And we all have our Holy Saturday experiences of waiting and wanting, of despair, when it seems like all hope is lost. And if we're fortunate, we also have Easter Day experiences of hope renewed and the embrace of new life. Any event in our lives, any experience that can be described as a dying to an old way of life in order to begin a new way of life, that is an experience of resurrection. So there is obvious, powerful personal meaning to Lent, Holy Week, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday. And we are invited into that journey that leads from death to resurrection to new life. But if it stops there, if it stops with this personal transformation and doesn't go any farther than that, if it stops with our own individual needs and experiences and never extends beyond that, well then, to be honest, that sounds to me like a pretty self-centered, narcissistic affair. Which leads us to the other kind of transformation, that is corporate or societal transformation, the transformation of community. Now, we all know, if we've been paying attention, that Jesus did not get himself killed by being gentle Jesus, meek and mild, saying witty things and telling clever stories. Jesus got himself killed by going up against the powerful Roman political authorities and the religious authorities of his day. Jesus got himself killed by naming injustice whenever and wherever he saw it. Jesus got himself killed by advocating for those who had no voice of their own, the poor and the powerless. Jesus got himself killed, in short, by speaking truth to power. When Jesus' followers called him Lord, it wasn't just some pious affectation. When they called Jesus Lord, it was a deliberately provocative and taunting choice of words, because they were also saying, or at the very least implying, that Caesar, the political authority, was not Lord. A very dangerous thing to say. They were saying that their highest loyalty, their highest allegiance was not to Caesar, but to Jesus. The story of Holy Week, as told by the four gospel writers, enables us to hear the passion of Jesus that led to his execution. And we know that his passion was the kingdom of God. What life would be like on earth if God were ruler, and the rulers, domination systems, and empires of the world were not. This is the world that the Hebrew prophets dreamed of, a world of distributive justice where everybody has enough and systems are fair for everyone. This is God's dream for this world. And whether we like it or not, or whether we feel like we're up to it or not, it is to those same things that Christians are called today: naming injustice, advocating for the powerless, speaking truth to power. I may have told you this story before, excuse me, but it's short. It's about Archbishop Dom Helder Camara of Brazil, who famously said, "When I give food to the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why the poor have no food, they call me a communist." Charity is a good thing, but it's not good enough. The late Patricia Clark, writing in what was then called the United Church Observer, now called Broadview Magazine, wrote, "When the Good Samaritan found a man beaten and robbed on the Jericho Road, he took him to an inn. Today, he would take him to a food bank or an Out of the Cold program. But should he stop there? Or should he also, as Martin Luther King Jr. once suggested, should he also campaign for police patrols on the Jericho Road? Should he ask why so many people need food banks and shelters?" And there we go, from personal charity to social justice. Clark continues in her article, "The gospel message goes far beyond personal morality. The Bible promises good news to the poor and bad news to the idle rich. That's why Black slaves were punished for reading the Bible, because Jesus said he came to bring freedom to the captives, sight to the blind, and justice to the destitute, and slave owners certainly didn't want slaves reading that. When Jesus preached regime change, the kingdom of God on earth, he upset the system. The rulers didn't like it then, and they don't like it today. Unfortunately, we've done a really good job of domesticating the gospel, domesticating Jesus, domesticating God. Because the truth is, the gospel is a radical, countercultural document. And so resurrection is the refusal to be imprisoned any longer by history and its long hatreds. It's the determination to take the first step out of the tomb. And it may be personal circumstances that paralyze us, things going on in our own lives, or it may be a social norm or rule or convention that confronts us and prevents us from being who we really feel called to be. Whatever it is, we simply refuse any longer to accept it. We just say, no, no more, no longer, not me. We Christians are sometimes called an Easter people, people of the resurrection. To be people of the resurrection only has meaning, it's only true, if we are people who believe in the possibility of transformation and new life. Transformed lives, transformed attitudes, transformed communities, a transformed world. But as they say, talk is cheap, and our action is the proof of our belief. Belief in resurrection means that we commit ourselves now to the possibility of transformation. It means that we continue to struggle with the intractability, the stubbornness of our own human nature. It means joining together with other people in order to bring new life both to individuals but also to human communities that are still held in the grip of fear and death. The message of Easter, the truth of Easter, is not bound in time. It's not about the resuscitation of a dead body 2,000 years ago. It's a timeless story. So whatever you believe or don't believe about what happened or didn't happen 2,000 years ago, I'm going to say doesn't really matter. Because the message is the same, exactly the same, whether you're a biblical literalist or read the Bible metaphorically. And this is the message, that good is stronger than evil, that love is stronger than hate, that life is stronger than death. Easter, there is a kind of truth behind it. Thanks be to God.